Hello everyone, greetings. Welcome to the webinar on intellectual property rights organized by Lex Harbor Jurica in collaboration with Lawway with Lawyer. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join this webinar today. We are going to spend the next hour unpacking a topic that is absolutely critical in today's economy. Understanding intellectual property rights under the Indian law. So before we start, I wanted to know how many of you are already familiar with the concept of IPR. I will appreciate an interactive session and everyone give their answers through chat box and I appreciate that you guys have notebook and a pen because I'm gonna be sharing the content which will be more than just the PPT. And we're also gonna have quizzes in between. So okay, I see there are a lot of people who knows IPR already, but even if there are beginners, you guys don't have to worry because I'll be starting from the scratch and I'll be dealing with the basics. So if you guys have any doubts, you can ask me at any moment of this webinar and I'll appreciate again an interactive session. So let's start by understanding intellectual property rights and why is it important. So, I want you guys to think about what you did within the first 10 minutes of waking up this morning. So, you probably reached over and turned off the alarm on your smartphone. That single device in your hand is protected by tens of thousands of individual patents covering its screen, its battery, and its processor. Okay, after turning off the alarm, maybe you likely went to washroom and used a specific brand of toothpaste, right? That brand name and the logo on the tube are shielded by a trademark. And maybe after that, you opened a news app or put on a playlist while making your morning coffee. The articles you read and the songs you listened to are protected by copyrights. So before you even stepped out of your house or opened your laptop for work, you interacted with dozens of intellectual property rights. They are invisible legal threads that dictates how we innovate, how we create, and how we do business globally. And today we are going to make that invisible web visible. Over the next hour, I will walk you through the five major pillars of Indian IP law, which is patent, trademarks, copyright, designs, and geographical indication. After each major section, we'll pause for a quick quiz so you can test your understanding in the real time. So, let's start with the basics. So, what is intellectual property? Before I start giving you the notes, I want you guys to tell me what is your understanding of intellectual property? What comes into your mind when you hear the word intellectual property? You can give your answer via chat box as well if you're not comfortable unmuting yourself. Okay, Shalini is like something that we create or innovate with our skills. Intellectual thoughts of human, which is specific manner or field.
Ma'am, it also
Yes.
refers to creation of mind, like inventions, brand names, logos, etc.
A trademark. Well, it is a kind of IPR, but I want you to understand what intellectual property is. Product of minds which can be converted as a property, correct? It is a set of rules that allows devices to communicate and exchange data over the internet. Correct. So all of you have a basic understanding of it. Intellectual property rights are legal rights that protect creators and innovators from having their original work, invention, or brand identities stolen, copied, or used without their permission. Correct. Every one of you has a clear understanding of intellectual property. So, what actually is intellectual property? So, when we hear the word property, we usually think of tangible things, right? For example, real estate, a car, or a piece of gold. Like this is something we can touch, look, or even put a fence around them. For example, a land or a property. But intellectual property is different. It's intangible. We cannot touch it. It is creation of mind, as one of our fellow members have written. So it is it refers to our legal rights over intangible assets, things which we cannot touch but which can hold tremendous commercial value. A brilliant new engine design, for example, a famous brand name, a hit song, a secret recipe. Because these are the creation of the human mind, the law treats them as a property. Just like a house, you can own IP, you can sell it, you can rent it out through licensing, and most importantly, you can legally stop others from trespassing on it. So, but before we look at the different types of IP, we have to ask, why does the law grant these monopolies? Like, why am I my idea is being protected by the government? What is government gaining from it? Why is government giving individuals exclusive rights over ideas? You guys can think and tell me, why is government actually protecting the ideas which are not even tangible? Is there any benefit that society can hold over it, or is there any one-sided benefit that government is only taking it? Nidhi is saying that can be monetized and one should not copy to encourage their productivity. Correct. So you guys may think that it is a very uh, generic questions that the government is doing it just for the benefit of society, but there is more to it. There are actually five key philosophical theories behind this, and I will share them with you because they directly shape how Indian judges decided cases today. So all the answers that you guys wrote are actually related to the philosophies that I'm gonna be sharing with you guys. First, natural rights. So the natural rights theory was famously argued by the philosopher John Locke. Locke said that if you go into nature and pick up an unowned apple from a tree, your physical labor is mixed with that apple, and therefore it becomes yours. The same applies to the mind. If you write a novel, the fruits of your intellectual labor naturally belong to you. So, what does it mean? Says that if I am putting all my hard work, my intellectual labor, so why should a third person get credit for something I did? So this is what natural rights says. If I have done something, if I had made something, I am the sole owner and I would be the primary benefiter of it. This is what John Locke actually argued. And second, we have utilitarian theory. So this is arguably the most powerful theory in Indian law. It says that IP exists not just to make creators rich, but to promote the greater good of society. It's an incentive system. If anyone could just steal a new medicine the day it was invented, pharmaceutical companies would never spend billions on research. So the state grant temporary monopoly as a reward, pushing society forward. So this theory is what basically the Indian law follows, which is the utilitarian theory, which believes in the greater good of all. So if I made a path breaking creation, a path breaking drug that can, for example, cure cancer, the government want that process and government would want that product to be available to all the public, because this is a part breaking design and not everyone can afford it without having monopoly over it. So in terms of utilitarian theory, it means that if I am showing my patent work to the public, I am getting monopoly, but in the end the public will have the access of my products. So in a way it is benefiting the both society as well as the patent creator. Thirdly, we also have the social contract theory. This is a deal between the inventor and the public. The deal is simple. You reveal your secret to the world so we can learn from it, and in exchange, the government protects you from copycats for a limited time. I mean, I would not like a third person to copy my path breaking drug research or anything without me even getting a credit. That will be a waste of my resources as well. So social contract theory actually proposes that if I have done the labor, I will be the sole owner, and you have to follow a contract so that no one can copy my work. There are also two more theories, which is personhood theory and reward theory. Personhood theory came from the philosopher Hegel, who believed that creative works are an extension of creator's soul. When a painters paint a masterpiece, a piece of their identity goes into canvas. That is why artists have moral rights to protect their work from being mutilated even after they sell it. I repeat, artists have moral rights to protect their work from being mutilated even after they sell it. For example, I made a song which is very personal for me, and I would be wanting a monopoly for it because I put my own personal experience towards it. So looking at another third person not knowing anything about the history of that song and using it without my credits would actually be disadvantageous for us, because we'll be demotivated to work on the song or anything else creative. And lastly, it is reward theory. So, very simply, if you do something beneficial for the society by inventing something new, the society owes you a just reward for your effort. So, in practice, Indian IP law is a delicate balancing act of all these theories. The government wants to reward the inventor, but they also want to ensure the public is not held hostage by massive monopolies. Keep that balance in mind as we look at our first major rights, which is patents. So before we move forward, can anyone tell me what is their idea of patents and what that actually is? Protective Protecting innovation. Yes. Any more guesses? Exclusive right granted to for an innovation. Okay, guys, when you write innovation, what do you mean by innovation? Provide motivation through protection, legal right given to the creator, scientific innovation, creation of thoughts. Yes, this line is very important. Creation of thoughts. A legal right to have a monopoly over the particular creation. Correct. Okay. Innovation means something. Right. So this is one of the major elements of patent, which is innovation. So let's just dig deep into it. So, patent is an exclusive right granted for an invention, and in India, this is governed by the Patent Act of 1970. So, which act is governing patents? This is the Patents Act of 1970. So, how does patent law works? So, here is the grand bargain of patent law. You must draft a highly detailed document. A complete specification should be provided explaining exactly how your invention works so that anyone skilled in your field should replicate it. In exchange for teaching the public how to make it, the government grants you a strict monopoly of 20 years from the date you file the application. So, how many years of monopoly are given for the patent? 20 years from the date we file the application. So, we need to take that in mind that from the day we file the application for the patent, our monopoly of 20 years starts. It doesn't start when the patent is granted. For example, I made a drug for cancer, the same example, and for that I filed the patent on, let's just say, 1st April. So my patent would start around 1st April itself, and let's just say my patent was granted around 3rd May. So which is the date will be followed for the 20 years limitation time? It will be 1st April because that's the time I started my application. I filled my application. So this is one of the most confusing part of the patent. People think that the date where they got the patent granted is the date of their monopoly, but it's not. The date of filing the application is the date where we get the strict monopoly of 20 years. Okay, so let's deal with one of the section, which is section 2 1 subclause J. To get a patent, your invention must pass very three tests. So there are three compulsory tests to get a patent. Not any invention can get a patent. They should pass three tests. The first one is it must be novel. So what do you guys mean by novel? Anyone? Novel means new. Correct. So this means that it is absolutely new, a genuine creation without replicating other any other process. 100%, yes. So it cannot have been published, sold, or publicly demonstrated anywhere in the world before your filing date. I I can give you one example of Wix. Imagine the formulation of Wix. It's already in the public, right? Because it is a registered patent. So what I do is I make something similar to Wix, the same formulation, and I apply for patent. Will I get the patent? Yes or no? It's the same formulation, I've been, but I will change the name from Wix to any other thing. So will I get? Maybe if it shows efficacy. See, if I'm 100% following the same formula, the court will reject the moment it sees it because this is not new. Novel means that it should be absolutely new. It should not be publicly demonstrated anywhere in the world before our filing date. So, what happened with my case is I've already seen the formulation of Wix because it is in public, and I've used the same formulation. So, I myself has have copied the Wix formulation, so it is not possible for me to get the patent. It should be absolutely new. The efficacy part happens when I no, I have added something new from that other formulation, and that new efficacy should be in such a manner that it shows that it has changed a lot or it has upgraded a lot. So this is the first compulsory test that a patent needs. So the first is it must be novel. What's the second one? It must have an inventive step. So what do you mean by inventive step? Must have economic importance, how it is invented or created, execution of idea into reality. Yes. So adding novel with the inventive step, what do we understand? We understand that this means that it cannot be an obvious improvement. If any average engineer in our field would look at a problem and easily come up with our solution, it is not inventive. It has to involve some technical leap. As someone in the chat box already wrote that if the efficacy is there, the exception can be given, right? But the efficacy should have an inventive step. It should be the upgradation of the same former things which is happening. And the third compulsory test is it must have industrial application. Okay, the name is obvious, but I still want you guys to tell me what is industrial application. Like Tesla's technology. Okay, but what does Tesla technology do, Sonam? Like, how does it have an industrial application? Capable of being used in the industry, correct? Any other guesses? Can be used for commercialization, correct? Used in any field. What do you mean by used in any field? Electric car. Yeah. Yep, that technology can come into an inventive step. But industrial application is something which can be used in an industry, as Sharmila said. It should be used for commercialization. If I am making something which I cannot put out in the market, then it cannot be patented. So one of the main important compulsory test is industrial application. Like, the logic is clear. Why would government protect my Coca-Cola's recipe? No, Coca-Cola recipe will actually deal with this later. It is a part of, it can be under intellectual property right, but it's not patent. That I'll tell you when we move forward to it. So yeah, industrial application, I was telling that government, if there is no commercialization, if it's not made known to the public, why would government protect my patent? Obviously it should be out in the market and the general public should be using it. So industrial application means just that, so that it can be commercialized. So this was section 1 subclause J. Section 2 subclause 1J. Now we talked about what and all can be patented and what are the compulsory tests for a patent to get granted. But there are several things as well which cannot be patented. So section 3 of the Patent Act, which lists things that are explicitly non-invention, As India is a developing nation, it made a deliberate policy choices to keep certain things free for the public. So India hails its socialism policy, right? So not everything can be monopolized. So there are several things which cannot be patented and which are out in the public without any patent. So what does it mean that it's without any patent? That means that any other person can use it without the fear of copying it or without the fear of getting sued by using the same formulation. Let's see an example. Section 3K says that you cannot patent a mathematical method, a business method, or a computer program per se. If you write an amazing new app, you cannot patent the software code itself in India. You would have to protect it under copyright instead, unless the software creates a novel technical effect when combined with specific hardware. So again, the criteria of novelty comes here. If it's not novel, it won't come. And just because you just invented a software in a computer program, you won't be eligible to get patent. But we have to move forward with the most famous exclusion, which is section 3D. So what is section 3D? Section 3D prevents what is known as evergreening. I'll repeat it again. Section 3D prevents what is known as evergreening. Let's say a pharma company has a patent on a drug and the 20 years is about to expire. To keep their monopoly, they slightly tweak the chemical formula and maybe they turn it from a tablet into a syrup or change a minor salt and apply a fresh 20-year patent. Will they get the patent if they just slightly tweak the chemical formula? You guys can think and let me know. So what they're doing is known as evergreening. They're just making a slightly tweaks in their existent patent to expand their monopoly on patents for another 20 years. So I want you guys to tell me that is it possible in patent law or not? Does anyone think it's a yes? Okay, since everyone thinks it's a no, that's correct. Section 3D stops this. It says that the mere discovery of a new form of a known substance cannot be patented unless it results in a massive increase in the therapeutic efficacy. So, what does it mean? It means that just tweaking some of the chemical formulas, like only 1% or 2%, will not lead to a new creation of a new patent monopoly. It should have a massive increase in its efficacy. That's what our compulsory test as has been mentioned as well. It should be inventive, right? You cannot just use the same formula again and again and claim patent for your product for another 20 years. So this is what happened. But this provision was challenged all the way to Supreme Court of India in the legendary case of Novartis Gleevec case. So this case is very important for the Patents Law Act because it actually recognized the malpractice of evergreening. So what happened in the case? The Swiss giant Novartis tried to patent a new version of their cancer drug Gilvec. So Gleevec was their cancer drug, and the Swiss giant was Novartis. They were the corporate entity which used to make cancer drugs, and they wanted to patent their new version of their cancer drug. So one thing we need to keep in mind is their cancer drug Gleevec was already patented, and they just made a new version of it. So they came to so they came to Supreme Court saying that, oh, we have made a new version of our existing cancer drug. Can we get it? Can we get the new patent? It was rejected by the Indian Supreme Court, of course, under Section 3D, stating that the new version was not significantly better for the patients. This one section is why India is known as the pharmacy of the developing world, providing affordable generic medicines globally. So, why is this judgment very important? Because imagine the new drug with a mere change in chemical formula got the patent. They have the monopoly towards that drug, right? It is one of the most important drug. It is a cancer drug. So accordingly they can set up new charges of it as well, and not everyone can afford it. So it the patent was rejected and it was made public. Sonam is asking, if anyone writes an article, will they get it patented or copyrighted? Like many scholars give principles to how they own their principles legally. So article does not have an invention, right? It is just the artistic expression. So it will come under copyright, and we'll be dealing in the with the concept of copyright just after this. So this is what we studied. Not everything new receives a patent. Section 3 balances commercial rewards with the public interest, correct? So these are the things which cannot be patented along with what we have discussed. Now let's move forward to term, process, and licensing. Another incredible public interest tool in Indian patent law is compulsory licensing under Section 84. So, which section talks about compulsory licensing? That is Section 84. So, let's say you hold a patent on a life saving drug, but you are charging an exorbitant price that ordinary citizens cannot afford. Under Indian law, if 3 years have passed since the patent was granted, the reasonable requirements of the public are not being met, or the drug is not affordable, the government can step in. They can issue a compulsory license to a local generic manufacturer, allowing them to make and sell the drug at a fraction of cost while paying you only a small royalty. So, what does it mean? It means that the government can actually strip off your patent after 3 years and can give you the royalty, because not everyone can afford a expensive medicine or drug in India. So this actually happened in 2012. The German company Bayer had a patented kidney cancer drug called Nexavar. They were charging Indian patents about 2.8 lakh for 1 month's doses. The Indian Patent Office stepped in and granted a compulsory license to the Indian company Natco Pharma, who bought the exact same drug to the market for just 8,000 a month. This is ultimate example of utilitarian theory that we discussed, balancing the inventor's reward against public health. So we are done with our topic patent, and I need you guys to see all of this quiz and answer it. So first is, which section of Patent Act 1970 list inventions that are not patentable? We just talked about that. Yep. Okay, moving forward, the Novartis Gleevec case is associated with which provision? We just discussed about the evergreening case. It's related to that. Section 3D. Correct. How long does a patent last in India from the date of filing? 20 years. Yes. Fourth one, in under which section can a compulsory license be if issued for unaffordable drugs? So the options have been cut, but you guys can take a wild guess. Yep, it is section 84. Okay, good answers. Okay, now we shall move forward to the second most important intellectual property, which is trademark. So before we start, can anyone give their rough ideas what they understand by trademarks? Logo. Logo, slogan, brand name. Identity to recognize any brand. Yes. Okay. So while patents protect inventions, trademark protect brand identity. It is governed by the Trademark Act 1999. So what is a trademark? A trademark is any sign that distinguishes your goods or services from the goods or services of your competitors. Can you guys give any example of the trademarks that you guys see every day? Like, how does it distinguishes our goods from the our competitors' goods? Okay, so when we hear the word trademark, Nike shoe, correct. We probably think of brand names like Nike or logos like the McDonald's Golden Arches, right? But under Indian law, a trademark can be almost anything as long as it can be represented graphically and distinguishes your product. So, what do they encompass? It can be a word, a logo, the 3D shape of a product, like a unique glass contour of a Coca Cola bottle, or a color combination. For Cadbury, it heavily protects a specific shade of purple wrapper. We can even trademark a sound. The famous Yahoo Yodel and the 4-note Britannia jingle are registered sound marks in India. But can we trademark any word we want? No. The trademark registry looks at our application through something called the distinctiveness spectrum. So, what is this spectrum? Let's see. First is generic mark. We can never trademark a generic word. We cannot sell shoes and trademark the word shoe in it. It is a common name of the good and it belongs to anyone. So, first is generic marks. We cannot trademark generic marks. Second is descriptive marks. This describe the quality of the product. Imagine an ice cream brand cold and creamy. The registry will generally reject this. However, there is an exception. If we use a descriptive mark for so long and spend so much on marketing that the public instantly associates that word with our company, we achieve what lawyers call the secondary meaning. The classic Indian example is fair and lovely. The word fair and lovely is descriptive, but our mind automatically goes to the cream that they marketed. So it's purely descriptive, but through decades of massive marketing, they secured the trademark. Third is arbitrary marks. So arbitrary marks, now we get to the strong marks. This is when we take a common dictionary word and apply it to something unrelated. So if we sell computers with the word Apple, it is entirely arbitrary. Therefore, that is a brilliant, highly protectable trademark. Fourth is fanciful or coin marks. These are the strongest trademarks in the world. These are made of words that do not exist in any dictionary. So, fanciful or coin marks are something which the company has made up on their own and it does not exist in any dictionary whatsoever. Words like Kodak, Xerox, Rolex, or Amul. Because we invented the word from thin air, we have the right to own it virtually and absolutely. After coming to the distinctiveness spectrum, we will move forward to passing off. If someone copies our registered trademark, we can sue them for infringement. But what happens if you forget to register your trademark? Are you totally defenseless? Under the Indian law, no. India recognizes a common law concept known as passing off. If you can prove that you have been using that brand name for years and that you have built immensely goodwill and reputation in the market, and that a competitor is now using a similar name to trick your customer, you can get an injunction against them even without registration certificate. So there is a case that highlights this, which is the Daimler Benz versus Haiwo Hindustan. In 1990s, the German luxury car maker Mercedes-Benz discovered that a local Indian clothing company was selling men's underwear under the brand name Benz, complete with a copy of the famous three-pointed star logo. Now, Mercedes-Benz did not make the underwear, and they were not registered in that class of goods in India. But the court ruled in favor of car maker. The judge noted that the world Benz had a massive trans-border reputation, allowing an underwear manufacturer to use a luxury car logo that would dilute the brand and cause confusion. This is the power of passing off and the protection of well-known marks. So for well-known marks, you have to prove your goodwill. You have to prove that you are popular enough, and you have to prove that it is affecting your company and your commodities. Okay. Going with the quizzes, which is the strongest type of trademark on the distinctiveness spectrum? I just talked something about the existence of a word which is not in the dictionary, which comes under which term? Yes, fanciful, correct. The tort of passing off in Indian law allows protection of. We just gave the example of Mercedes Benz. Yes. Under which section are well known marks protected across all classes? Now, if you are a law student, I think you would be aware of this section. Yes, it's section 2. Cadbury's distinctive purple wrapper is protected as what type of mark? The option has been cut, but the answer is color mark. Okay, let's move forward to one of the most main IP rights, which is copyright. Again, can someone tell me what is the idea of copyrights? Anyone? Artistic work. Yes. So it's a clam. Original creative work. Yep. Okay, guys. So our third pillar is copyrights, which is governed by the Copyright Act of 1957. So while patents protect functional invention and trademark protect brand names, copyright protect creative expression. Like you guys said, it covers literary works like books or software code, dramatic works, musical works, artistic works, as well as cinematograph, film, and sound recordings. In India, copyright lasts for incredibly long time, which is the lifetime of an author plus 60 years after their death. So I would repeat that. The copyright lasts for an incredibly long time, which is the lifetime of an author plus 60 years after their death. So let's take example of Asha Bhosle. She is she was a phenomenal singer, right? And she just passed away this year. So her songs were copyrighted till this year, and after her passing, 60 plus years will be the time of her copyrighted music. So she had a whole lifetime of copyright on her music plus 60 more years after her passing. But we have to get the copyright material original because it must originate from us and involve some independent skill, labor, and judgment. However, the most critical concept in all of the copyright is one rule I want you to remember today, that is the idea expression dichotomy, which is written here. Copyright protects the expression of an idea and never the idea itself. So let's say you have a brilliant idea for a story. A young orphaned boy discovers he has magical powers, goes to a secret boarding school of wizards, and fights a dark lord. This is an idea. It is completely free for everyone to use. But if you name that boy Harry Potter and put him in Hogwarts and write a specific dialogue, that is your expression and that is strictly protected by copyright. The Indian Supreme Court cemented this landmark case of R.G. Anand versus Deluxe Film. A playwright named R.G. Anand wrote a play about marriage in India. Later, a popular Hindi film released a similar theme. Anand sued, claiming they stole his plot. The Supreme Court laid down the law, sharing the same basic theme, general plot, or underlying idea is not infringement. The court compared the script and the movie scene by scene and found that the specific treatment, dialogue, and expression were different. Therefore, no infringement occurred. So copyright is actually a bundle of exclusive rights. If you own a copyright, you have exclusive right to reproduce the work, distribute copies, and perform it in public or adapt it like a turning book into a movie. But India also strongly protects the moral rights of an author under Section 57. So 57 talks about the moral rights. As we discussed in the personhood theory earlier, an artist's reputation is tied to their work. Even if an author sells their entire copyright to the publisher, they retain the moral right to be credited as the author has the right to stop anyone from modifying the work in a way that harms their reputation. The But is copyright absolute? No. Copyright is not absolute at all. Under Section 52, Indian law allows for fair dealing. You can use small portions of copyrighted work without permission of specific purposes like research, writing a review or criticism, or reporting current events. So, right, as of 2026, we are dealing with the same case, similar case, which is the case of ANI versus OpenAI. Asian News International, which is a news agency, has sued creators of ChatGPT, alleging that OpenAI scraped their copyrighted news article without their permission. So this case is currently going on, and the primary defense of ChatGPT is that training an AI constitutes fair dealing, and it doesn't hurt the market for the original articles. The outcome of this case will literally shape the future of artificial intelligence regulation in India. Okay, since we are short on time, I'll try to finish the quiz as soon as possible. So, copyright protects expression, not ideas. This principle is called correct. Moral rights of an author are protected under which section? Section, yes, section 57. In India, copyright in literary work lasts for, I just gave you guys the example of Asha Bhosle, life of author plus 6 years, correct. And in the case of ANI versus OpenAI, which defense was followed? Since it has, the option is not visible, I'll go with the answer, which is fair deal. Okay. Now we'll quickly move forward to industrial design. So what is industrial design? It is governed by the Design Acts of 2000. This IP right protects the purely visual aesthetic appearance of an article. This means its shape, pattern, or the composition of its line and colors. Here is the golden rule of design law. The design must be judged solely by the eye. It is, if the shape of a product is dictated purely by functional technical necessity, it cannot be registered as a design. For example, if you design a unique, beautiful handle for a coffee mug, you can register that under Design Act. But if you design a teeth of an industrial metal gear, a shape that exists solely with the another machine that is functional, you cannot register it as a design, and you would have to seek a patent instead. So design is more of a aesthetic value rather than a process or an invention. So registration of industrial design is also mandatory, which lasts 10 years, which can be extendable to 5 years. Okay, a design under Design Act must be appealed to and judged solely by, as stated, it should be judged solely by the eye. Second, the can a functional shape dictated purely by technical necessity be registered as a design? If the aesthetic value is not there and only technical necessity is there, then no, it's excluded. Under 15, under section 15 of Copyright Act, if a design is registered under the Design Act, will the copyright and design happen simultaneously? No, the copyright will cease. Okay, our last IP types that we should be discussing is trade secrets and GI. So, what is trade secret? This is confidential business information that gives a company a competitive edge. It should be a manufacturing process, a massive customer database, an algorithm, or a recipe. The most famous trade secret in history is Coca-Cola formula. Someone actually asked me in the starting of the webinar that if Coca-Cola can come under patent. No, they come under trade secret. So why did Coca-Cola keep it as trade secret instead of filing for a patent? Because if they patented it, they would have had to publish the recipe for the world to see, and their monopoly would have expired exactly in 20 years. By keeping it a secret, their monopoly has lasted over a century. However, India does not have a specific Trade Secret Act. To protect a trade secret in India, you have to rely on the Indian Contract Act. I repeat, we don't have Trade Secrets Act, so we have to rely on Indian Contract Act. You must force employee and partners to sign an NDA, and if you don't take reasonable strict steps to protect your secret, like using password and restricted access, the Indian courts will not protect you if it leaks. So this was trade secret. Now we'll move forward to geographical indication or GIs. A GI identify a product as originating from a specific region, where a specific quality, reputation, or characteristic of that product is essentially due to its geography. Unlike patent or copyrights, which belongs to individual or corporation, a GI belongs to community of producers. Example in India include Darjeeling tea, Ga- Alfonso mangoes, and Mysore sandalwood oil. GIs are incredibly important for protecting Indian agriculture. Years ago, a Texas based American company called Rice Tech managed to get a US patent related to basmati rice lines, trying to claim the name of rice grown in America. The Indian government had to wage a massive legal battle utilizing GI principle to prove that true basmati possesses qualities entirely unique to the soil and climate of the Indo-Gangetic plains. India won, protecting the livelihoods of thousands of farmers. So, unlike every other IP, GI is more concerned itself with the area rather than their products. Okay, I have two questions. In the absence of a specific act, trade secrets are primarily protected through. I just repeated that line. Correct. Second, Darjeeling tea is protected in India under which act? GI Goods Act. Correct. Lastly, I would like to share one of the most important cases in IPR, which is the Bajaj versus the TVS saga. So, what happened in it? Now that we understand the theories and the different types of intellectual property, I want to show you how this actually looks like when it goes to the court. IP is rarely just one right in vacuum. Companies can use multiple IP rights to build fortresses around their products. So, what happened in this case? In 2007, the Indian motorcycle markets was booming. Bajaj Auto had completely revolutionized their iconic Pulsar motorcycle by inventing a technology called DTSI. They secured an Indian patent for this improved engine, which used a unique arrangement of two spark plugs to massively improve fuel efficiency and performance. Additionally, Bajaj registered multiple industrial designs to protect the sleek visual look of the Pulsar's fuel tank and headlamps. Later that year, their fierce rival TVS Motors announced the launch of a new 125cc motorcycle called the TVS Flame. The TVS Flame also featured an engine with twin spark plugs. Before TVS could even properly launch the bike, Bajaj struck. They rushed to the Madras High Court and filed a massive lawsuit claiming both patent infringement and design infringement. Bajaj successfully convinced a single judge to grant an interim injunction, a court instantly halting TVS from manufacturing or selling the flame. So TVS fought back ferociously. They appealed to a larger bench, arguing that Bajaj patent was invalid. TVS argued that using two spark plugs was an old technology already used by Honda globally, meaning Bajaj's patent lacked an inventive step. TVS also argued this engine valve was completely different. The legal war spread everywhere. The intellectual property appellate board also got involved. TVS even dragged Bajaj to anti-monopoly commission, accusing Bajaj of using IP litigation as an anti-competitive weapon to delay our rival's product launch. Eventually, this incredibly messy, expensive fight went all the way to Supreme Court before the two companies finally arrived at a confidential out-of-court settlement years later. So, what do we learn from this case? So we learn how to write our patent claims, which is everything. If we describe our invention too broadly, a competitor will prove that it's not novel. And if we write it too narrowly, a competitor will just tweak their product slightly to dodge a patent. So balance is everything. Second, IP is a corporate weapon. Bajaj used an injunction not to protect an invention but to strategically freeze a competitor out of market during crucial window launch. In the business world, IP is not just courtroom justice, it's about market share. So, since we have arrived at the time, I would like to conclude by saying IP in today's world is like a mandatory right that we all should know and follow. During this 1 hour, I was able to teach you guys theoretically, but I want you guys to learn IPR practically as well. That is why we have a course coming up, which is the IPR Weekend Extensive, which we will be dealing with it more practically and more in depth. In 1 hour, I was able to teach you guys theoretically, but it was not enough, and we need more time. So we have a course coming up soon, which will start on June 13th. So let's go with the mega quiz. It's only 3 questions, but it's just the summary of what we learned today. In which Indian statute governs patents? Yep. Second, what is the term of a patent in India? Don't get confused with patent and trademark or copyright. What is the term of patent in India? 20 years. That's correct. The last question, section 3D of Patent Act is about. Okay, correct. Okay, with that, I would be taking questions if you guys have any. So, our next IPR course will start from June 13th, which is Saturday, and it will be fully online, taking place on weekends, so we can manage it alongside with our job or college. So it's divided over 4 weekends. So we don't just talk about IP, we will do IP. We'll be practically dealing with all of the concepts. So it's divided into 4 weekends, and we'll log into InPass patent database together. I'll teach you how to run searches and patentability and drafting patent claims. Weekend 2 is we focus on trademarks. We'll search trademarks, we'll see trademark applications together, we'll solve it. Thirdly, we'll in third week we'll do copyrights registration procedures and how to draft an NDA, protect trade secrets, and paper for GI tags. And lastly, last weekend we'll do a project together. We will act as a legal advisor for a mock startup. So we'll audit the entire portfolio. So thank you everyone, and I'll see you guys on 13th June. The last day to register is June 12th, and all of the details will be shared in the IPR group only. The My team will work upon the IPR course and will let you know the descriptions as well. Okay, thank you everyone. If there is any questions, you can feel free to ask, or else we can conclude. The timings, my team will get back to you and will be sharing it on our IPR group itself. The session will start on June 14 and June 13, the first one. Okay, bye everyone.